Perfect. Let's start with, as the Minister was saying there, the ambition here is quite a bold one, isn't it, Nicky Morgan? You want Britain to be the most successful economy, advanced economy, by 2030. Well, to do that, we need a world-class education system, which rather begs the obvious question. And let's start, actually, with Juergen Maier, Chief Executive of Siemenns, employ 14,000 people here in the UK. Juergen, what's your experience? Is the British education system world-class?
I wouldn't describe it as world-class, but it definitely has pockets of excellence. So I think that's how I would describe it. And I would also say that when I look at the young people that or that join us as Siemenns, whether they're graduates or whether they are apprentices, I am most of the time just taken back by the sheer quality. I'm impressed, and I look at young people that I sort of marvel at and say, well, actually, they're a damn sight smarter than I was 30 years ago. So overall, I think we do spend sometimes too much time knocking and criticising our education system. Having said that, it's only pockets of excellence, and there are some areas that need improving, and the area that I would particularly focus on is vocational training. I think we need to scale up significantly, and ultimately, and I think the Prime Minister said it this morning, that we need to give every child the opportunity to have a vocational training.
Can you be clear what you mean by vocational training?
Well, I mean basically all of the training routes which are not taking you to university. And one of the key things within that, and it is a thing particularly in Great Britain, which is not so much across Europe, is that we have this significant image issue. You know, if your child in the UK goes through a vocational route, it's sort of, oh dear, you know, that was a bit of a failure.
That still persists.
Yeah, and what we need is we need to celebrate that and say, look, whether it's a vocational route or it's a graduate route, they are absolutely equal in terms of their standing in society.
Well, I wonder, perhaps Miriam Gonzalez Durantez, you can tell us what the culture and the attitude to which vocational training is like in Spain, I suppose, for starters. I want to, before I hear from you, I spoke to Vince Cable this morning, actually, as it happens, about this panel, and he said, he's allowed me to use this quote, it's quite juicy, you're going to like this. He says, despite all efforts at school and university for reform, Britain lags badly behind in vocational skills, and it has a lamentable career guidance service for non-academic kids. You agree with that?
I certainly agree on the careers guidance, and I hope that we can talk about that later on. I think that in general, the system, listen, if you compare it with other systems around the world, this is not a bad system. It is a system that needs improvement, and among others, it needs improvements because society keeps changing and the education system doesn't work as fast as society. I have to say to the Minister, though, that I'm quite disappointed to hear that in a speech about how is the system and what we can do to improve it, the word that I keep missing, and I keep missing it almost all the time when people in politics talk about education, is the teachers. How do you improve the education system? By engaging the teachers into making the system better. And I think that it could be good if the ministers don't see themselves as the headmaster or headmistress, but actually you see yourself, since we are in business, as the CEO of a company with whatever many teachers you have, 500,000, I think. It's actually not a huge
How many teachers
company.
454,000.
Oh, right.
Exactly, it's a tiny one. But you know, if you want to change how a company is doing, you actually have to engage with them, you have to make them enthusiastic. This is not only about telling them that they are disastrous. You know, the teachers are the ones that are going to make my children to be enthusiastic about learning.
Are you suggesting that teachers are not engaged and aren't enthusiastic?
I think that there is a whole lot of blame game going on about measures that are being imposed on the teachers. The teachers need to feel like if they are part of improving that system. And I think that there is one measure in particular that we consistently forget, and it's the training of the teachers, where I think that we all need to focus much more, whether it's in the government or whether it is when we business, we try to help with education.
Nikki Morgan, do you want to pick up on that briefly before we hear from the rest of the panel?
Yes, I mean, look, I gave a speech last Tuesday, and one of the big announcements is about the National Teaching Service, because actually there is a point there, which is that our education system will only ever be as good as the quality of teaching within it. And that's why we actually have the highest qualified teaching profession we have ever had. They've come out of university with great degrees. We have organisations like Teach First. But I think one of the points that, and I think Juergen made as well, which is we have great teachers and great schools in this country, we just don't have them everywhere. And so my task next 4.5 years, working with people in this room and beyond, is to make sure that every child in every corner of this country gets that great education.
But in terms of inspiring teachers, I mean, your predecessor had one or two relationship issues, didn't he, with his? How would you? Do you think you galvanise teachers? Do you think they're behind what you're doing? Do you think you're leading from the front?
Well, I get lots of lovely comments as I go around the country. I guess that's always to be the case when you go and visit. I think if you look at my Twitter timeline, you'll see that there are millions of people in this country. Everyone has a view on education. But I'm very clear that, as I say, we can only deliver education reform if we work with the teachers, with the heads, with the governors in
And teachers
schools.
are with you?
Well, I think that I get lots of emails and comments. People absolutely understand in schools why we need to drive up standards, and they're absolutely. We could only have made the change that we've done the last 5 years with the support of teachers.
Karl Tucker, let's pick up on that, because we're talking about nurturing skills, we're talking about pupils, but are there enough highly skilled teachers? Is there enough teaching talent, do you believe, in Britain?
I'm not sure, actually. I think the teachers I meet are pretty mixed. I think some of them are fantastic. I think some of them are a bit downtrodden by the system and possibly by the feedstock that are coming into them in the form of pupils. A lot of them are spending a lot of time being social workers before they get to teach. And if you're feeding them that kind of feedstock, then I think, what do we expect of them? So I think one of the challenges for us as businesses is how can we help step in and fill some of the gap that may be in society with a lack of parenting skills, lack of aspiration, lack of motivation.
Parenting skills are important, aren't they? I mean, that's absolutely crucial. Teachers can only do so much in a classroom. If a child is not achieving, oftentimes that's because of situations at home, isn't it?
Yeah, it goes without saying. I would imagine every child who's got a parent in this room will get fantastic role models, they'll get lots of motivation, they'll get lots of inspiration. But there's a lot of young people out there who don't get that. Exactly. So looking at the system, I mean, the system isn't perfect, we know that. But actually, if you look at what we're putting into it, are we expecting too much of it?
And what about when you come to recruit? I mean, we heard from Juergen just that actually he was pleasantly surprised and reminding us that the starting point here isn't actually that bad. I mean, what's your experience in terms of when you're interviewing and you're pulling people in?
It's mixed. Speaking to other companies in our area, I think we're all facing a similar challenge. So that's why we're trying to find ways of solving it.
But what skills are people lacking then?
Basic employability skills. So possibly even not turning up for the interviews.
Not turning up for the interview?
That's always a problem. We find those very difficult to employ.
That doesn't happen very often though, surely.
Not for one company, but if you speak to companies in the round, it happens quite a lot more often than you would imagine, which is quite disappointing. So how can we change that? I think we've got to. I know John and I have spoken before. Working with 12-year-olds and 14-year-olds, and 14-year-olds particularly, is a bit late. You need to get to them earlier. I think primary schools are key for us. I think we need to work with 8 to 10-year-olds somehow and inspire them to believe that there's opportunity and hope for the future, so that they hit secondary school running, wanting to learn, not coming in with teachers having to teach them to want to learn.
Are the problems you're identifying at school leaver age, are university students any more engaged?
I think so, because they tend to be the highly motivated ones anyway. They've had more encouragement, and if they came from a disadvantaged background and they've got to university, they've got an element of self-motivation anyway. So it's the middle to the bottom end of the spectrum of the job market, which I'm more concerned about.
Okay. Maggie Stilwell, you work for EY. You are Managing Partner for Talent. That's a good title. In terms of, Nikki was spelling out there that she wants to put maths, science, engineering absolutely at the core of what we're expert at. Are we good at teaching those subjects currently?
Well, EY has the luxury of being able to interview a huge, bright, enthusiastic crowd of young people who have mastery in all those subjects and others. And we take that raw aptitude and convert it into people who can be great with our clients. But what we did become aware of is that insofar as world-class outcomes are concerned, when we look at GCSE results and A-level results, that we became concerned as a firm that because we were using that as a selection criteria, that actually that was producing not an equal access to the fantastic opportunities available at EY. So we took the big step of thinking about what were the key strengths in people that made them successful at EY. And if we could focus on those, then could we actually get rid of the filter of UCAS points and degree classification, which have too much of a social bias, I think, for our liking at the moment. And so we took that step in August to remove those as a blocking filter to get onto our application system. So now, regardless of your UCAS points or your degree classification, you can have a chance at having a career at EY.
Regardless of where you went to university?
Regardless of where you went to university. So you enter online application, and it will look at your numerical aptitude, it will look at your strengths, it will give you a set of situations. And the great thing about that is not only can we tell whether or not you're going to be successful, it also gives that young person an insight into the workplace that they're coming into.
So how's the profile of the people you are interviewing changed then?
Well, this is obviously a new change. We made it for this year's application system, and we're quite early in that process. But I'm really delighted to say that already we have 1 in 10 people in our who have successfully got past that initial hurdle of the application system who would not have been there this time last year. They would have been screened out just on their UCAS points.
But this is the first year you're running it, so but it's an
year,
interesting...
early stages, but there's some promise there.
I wonder if more generally on the issue of university education, Miriam, I mean 50% of Britain, of people in school leavers in Britain, just under, is it, go on to university. If you go back to, well, actually, Jeff Randall used to go on about this when I was at Sky with him. But he pointed out when he was younger, in the 1970s, only 5% did. And I think he felt very strongly that we're sending too many people to university. Miriam, is that your view? Are we here in Britain, do we encourage too many to go to university, too many to take degrees that actually won't necessarily be useful to them?
I think that may be happening not just in the UK, that may be happening all throughout the West generally. And I think that it may have to do with people looking down for a long time on vocational training, which is something that Juergen was picking up beforehand. How you rebalance that, that is going to require quite a lot of time. I think that here in particular we have the issue that the pyramid, at the top is very narrow. You have pretty much everybody trying to focus on 2 or 3 universities, which is creating a massive pressure down the system. I frankly think that that could be one of the big advantages of globalization. I'm dying for the day that the students here, and I have 2 kids in secondary school and 1 in primary school, that they start looking at the world in terms of university, that they could be going to America, they could be going to Germany.
And they're in the state system.
And that would help a lot. They are in the state system, all of them, as indeed I was during my whole education. But I think that would alleviate a lot of the pressure that we currently have. But generally, I think that there are still quite a lot of people that go to university and they don't really want to have a degree, so we should be offering another alternative.
Did you choose to send your kids to the state education, or did you feel, I suppose, there was a political
Well, I came all of it from a state school system. I went to the school in my village. There was not even any choice. I went to the nearest public university that was close to my village. My parents were both state teachers, and actually my father, who then was in politics, did a lot about the state education in Spain. So I suppose that it was in my DNA.
Right. I want to talk briefly, because another thing that Nicky Morgan raised in the speech was the collaboration between business and schools. Juergen, tell us a little bit about what Siemenns is doing briefly, please, because we're sort of slightly pushed for time. But the projects that you're getting involved with.
Well, we're doing a lot. So, but I mean, the main project we've launched, we call it a project called the Curiosity Project. And what we've done is we've partnered up with organisations that we think are doing great things in this space, which is science festivals, it's car racing organisations, and we get our people, usually our apprentices, because they're the best ambassadors, to go out and engage with young people on these activities. We're so far, since we've launched it 2 years ago, we've been out to about 400,000 young people, and the trick, it's been mentioned a couple of times, is to get to people very young. So we're targeting people sort of 7 to 12-year-old, because that's probably the time where you can influence.
And when you approach schools, are they enthusiastic? Do they say, clamber aboard, great idea, or are they hesitant?
Well, the truth is it's a little bit mixed on that front. So a lot of schools, yes. Some, it's a little bit more of a struggle, and that is an issue.
Karl Tucker, you also get involved. Yo Valley is involved as the Bridgewater scheme as well, don't you? I mean, some parents are quite hesitant about the idea of businesses getting involved in education. Can you understand why?
No, I think there's a natural slag off business in Britain, which
really?
is, well, just in general, but big business is bad. So I don't think people understand business. They're all employed by businesses and they'll get paid by businesses, but business itself as a concept, I don't think is readily understood. So I think there's nervousness. Is it going to be marketing? Is it going to be just trying to sell your products? As Juergen says, I think schools are very mixed in their approach. In Bridgewater, we've got a couple of schools which are fantastic and engaged, and others are less so. One of the challenges we see is that you try and put together a package, which from the business world makes sense. A business challenge day, for example, you go and offer that to 5 schools, and they're all different. We can't do that. You're treating us all the same. In our world, they are all the same. They're a process, young people in, educated young people out, hopefully. But they all engage on a very different level. They want everything tailored. And when you're trying to engage with them as businesses, you've got limited time, you've got limited resources. You need something which is ready to deliver.
Do you think generally businesses do enough? I mean, you benefit, obviously, from what the education system is shaping and forming. Do you think businesses should be doing more than they are?
If you search on the internet what businesses are doing, there's huge amounts of stuff out there. Quite inspiring stuff. And you meet David Richards from Lloyds Bank. He's fully engaged with businesses in the community up in Birmingham. But it doesn't seem very joined up. And I think that if we could leverage all the energy and the enthusiasm in a more coordinated way, I think we could achieve much more. One of the challenges, I think, is that the government calls for our help, which is great, but it doesn't provide the facilitating enablers for that to happen. Well, and one thing we're missing is revenue, potentially, to help fund some posts, to help pull it all together. Perhaps that's what the Careers and Enterprise Company is aiming to do in the future. We've yet to see that. I sit on a people's group for the Heart of the West Leadership.
Is that going to change, Nicky Morgan?
Yeah, I think it will. I mean, I don't want to cut Karl off, but I think the Careers and Enterprise Company was launched for exactly that reason. They've only been going since the Chancellor announced £20 million for them this time last year. They've only really been going since the early part of this year, and you all know how long it takes to get company and organisations up and running. We had the election as well. But they are there exactly to do that bridging between schools and businesses, for the reason that there are many schools that absolutely welcome, and it's easy for a business to contact them, or alternatively they'll go out and look for a local business, particularly if you've got a large local business like a Siemenns or a JLR or a Rolls-Royce. But actually there are parts of the country where you don't have a big obvious business, and so that's exactly what the enterprise advisors will do. They are looking at the schools where there are what they're calling cold spots, where there's very little careers advice, and actually saying, what do we need to do? Who can we get in to help? And the point I was making in the speech was there's lots of different ways for businesses to help with that.
Okay. I want to throw things open to the floor now and get some questions from you lot.